Well, good evening and welcome to Senior Info. And we're doing this show all through the summer because Kelly does not have a chance to meet with her seniors anymore because of this COVID, which I am getting so sick of.
We are.
Yes.
We were just discussing how tired, well, we know we have to still abide by all the rules and regulations, but boy, is it getting exhausting.
Yep. But you see, we're social distancing. I think this is better than 6 feet.
I think so too.
So
Yes.
we're meeting the requirements. And we would have met them with our guest as well, but she couldn't make it, but
She's
she
going
is
to call
going to
in.
call in. That seems to be the way a lot of people are meeting today.
That is,
Uh,
yes.
We had a planning board meeting this week online.
How did
Everything
that
is-
go?
We made it through, but it's just not, I don't.
It's
feel-
not the same, I
No.
agree. But for my Council on Aging board, we had our first meeting this week on Tuesday morning. I am so proud of my board members
They all
who
got
were
on,
frightened to even think about it, and they did it, and I'm so proud of them.
And the thing, I know today everybody has a phone. You can do it with a phone,
Sure.
but not everybody has laptops and
No,
PCs,
no.
and so I don't know how that works out.
This might be our friend calling in now. So Julie
Yes, it
McMurray is a senior manager at the Alzheimer's Association, and she is kind enough to share her expertise with us. So I'm going to have Harry answer the phone.
Let me get this line, okay. And, yeah. Okay, hello, Julie?
Hello, how are you?
Okay, we got you on, you're on the air.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for this opportunity. I apologize I can't be in the studio with you.
Yes, that's too bad, but we're making it virtually.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, and I'm looking for the volume on the phone, but I guess we got it up all the way.
Okay.
All
And
right,
I have
so-
mine up all the way too.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk Alzheimer's now. I mean, the big topic of the day is COVID, but we've had enough COVID now.
Yes.
I think, unfortunately, when you have something like this, it takes away from other problems, and Alzheimer's is a big problem,
Yes.
Yes, it is.
and getting more so all the time. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Years ago, I'm up there in years, you never heard of it.
No, it was referred to as
Dementia,
yeah, which it,
Yeah.
old age.
I can speak to that. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. And for those that are watching the show and listening to me, my name is Julie McMurray, and I'm the Senior Manager for the Central Regional Office of the Alzheimer's Association and Community Outreach. And I'm part of the Massachusetts, New Hampshire chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And we fall under the National Alzheimer's office out of Chicago, and there's chapters in every single state. And to talk a little bit about your comment is, we did used to call Alzheimer's senility, dementia, hardening of the arteries, but Alzheimer's was first described back in 1906 by a German physician named Alois Alzheimer's. And it was considered very rare. But what we've learned over the last 100 plus years is that, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, and dementia in and of itself isn't a disease or a diagnosis. It describes symptoms. And then there are many types of illnesses that cause those dementia symptoms, Alzheimer's being the most common form.
Oh, before we go any further, if you've got access to the internet, we're live on the net right now.
Wonderful.
You can go to YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you go to Northbridge Television, and you'll see the show live.
Excellent. That's wonderful.
All right, so I don't know if you have access right there, but
Yes.
then you can.
I don't right now, and there might be a little bit of a delay, so that's why it's probably better that I don't have it.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a delay,
Yes.
but this will be on the net too as well tomorrow.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you.
So you'll be able to watch, and you can actually put an attachment on it. You know, what do you call it?
I'm thinking I'll post it onto the Senior Center page
Yes.
on social media,
Yeah.
so that people that didn't have an opportunity to watch this evening can watch it at, whenever
Or if they
they
want to see it
wish.
again because they might have missed something, or want to
Exactly,
hear something over.
right.
Great.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, it seems it's like a lot of diseases for the elderly. As we're living longer, we're seeing more
Yeah.
people coming down with these ailments, right?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. So, one of the risk factors for developing Alzheimer's is age. And, what are we all doing? We're living a lot longer than we ever have before. So, medical research has done a phenomenal job finding cures, treatments, preventative cures for diseases that people would have died from 30, 40 years ago. So right now, age is the biggest risk factor for developing Alzheimer's. And to go back to your initial point is, back in the 50s and 60s, again, we didn't know a lot about Alzheimer's and dementia. And so, there's some theory that people that were institutionalized and considered to have mental health issues probably had some form of dementia, but we didn't know enough. And
Right.
certainly we know now that, Alzheimer's and the other dementias, they're neurological diseases. They're not mental health diseases.
Now, and this is we talked about people getting older and coming down with, but it's not all. You can be younger. You can be in your 50s and come down
Correct.
with it, right?
Yeah, so right now, just to give you some statistics, it's estimated that about 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's in the United States. Here in Massachusetts, about 130,000 individuals are living with Alzheimer's. But you're right, Alzheimer's doesn't only affect people that are over the age of 65 or somebody in their 80s. There is a type of Alzheimer's called young onset Alzheimer's that occurs before the age of 60. And it's estimated that right now there's about 250,000 individuals living in the United States with young onset Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And, it can be very challenging because, a person could be diagnosed in their 50s and still be working. So
Yes.
there's some very unique challenges for an individual that's diagnosed at a young age.
Well, and especially today, a lot of couples are waiting till they're older to have children. They could have young children at home and be inflicted with it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it is considered very rare, but yeah, it is occurring, and so it does. The youngest person I actually worked with was in his 40s, and he had a young child, and we had to do a lot of work to be able for him to be able to financially provide for his family, and he was able to continue to work. But it does bring about some very important issues that you have to address if you're diagnosed that young.
Yes, I can see that. We're kind of jumping around from the outline, but you segued into a very important factor here. That's what your organization does.
Yeah.
Part of it.
So our mission at the Alzheimer's Association is to eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research to provide and enhance care and support for all affected. And I emphasize the word all, because even though a person is living with Alzheimer's and has been diagnosed, the impact is also on their caregivers and their family. And we also try to reduce the risk of developing, educating people to reduce the risk of developing dementia through the promotion of brain health. Ultimately, our vision is a world without Alzheimer's disease and all other dementia. And we do that. We do a lot of work. We talk about our three pillars, care, cause, and cure. And I would say one of the most important services that we offer at the Alzheimer's Association is our helpline. It's accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so available all day, every day. It really is the gateway to accessing all of our other programs and services. And sometimes people call just because they need to talk to somebody about what they're experiencing. Maybe they're a caregiver and they're totally exhausted because they're caring for someone with Alzheimer's or other dementia. And so sometimes it's just good to talk to somebody and know what they're experiencing is normal. But we also can provide a lot of information on resources, education programs, community resources, support groups. So that is a wonderful number for anyone that's listening. And I will tell you, it's the helpline number is 1-800-272-3900.
And now, anyone can call too, right? Even a caregiver or someone who's married to someone with the ailment?
Absolutely. We encourage anybody that has a question about Alzheimer's or an other form of dementia to call. We encourage families, a family member to call, a caregiver to call. Someone that's living with Alzheimer's can certainly call as well,
Right.
well as professionals. We want to make sure that until there's a cure or a means of prevention, we're here to provide support, education, and really help to navigate community resources for those individuals that may have questions or maybe in a challenging situation. So anybody can call that helpline. And again, it's available all day, any day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 11 in the morning, 11 at night.
Yeah, I know that for a spouse that has Alzheimer's, it can be a very, very tough life because, you're taking care of them 24/7,
Yep.
and you feel you might be been married for 50 years, and now you've lost that person that you were married to.
Right. Yeah, and that is it's very difficult to be a caregiver, and it's so important for the caregiver to acknowledge those feelings. You go through a grieving process. Alzheimer's and the other types of dementia, they're all progressive. There is no cure. There is no means of prevention. And so as the person declines through their journey, they experience a lot of losses, and those losses are very apparent to the caregiver, to the spouse. And so we want those individuals that, are a caregiver to a spouse or to really connect with us. Normally prior to COVID-19, we would be out in the community doing a lot of education programs. and we have a lot of volunteers that offer support groups. During this time of COVID-19, we've moved everything online. So we have support groups that people can call into, or they can join virtually. We have education programs because we recognize that, maybe day programs aren't open. Maybe home health aid isn't able to come in right now. And we are seeing some changes in that things are opening up a little bit more. But the caregiver, over the last several months has been providing that 24-hour care, and it can be very, very exhausting. So we want families to call that helpline number, and then we can help navigate and connect them to a support group, and right now virtually, but ultimately it's our goal to get back out in the community. And also education. I'm a firm believer that education is knowledge and it's power. And if you have the right information, you can make the best decision, not only for your loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, but also yourself as a caregiver.
What I'm going to do is we have a bulletin board here on the channel that we play in between shows, and we'll post your number on there.
Oh, that's wonderful. I would really appreciate that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we'll post it on there for anybody wants help with Alzheimer's, wants to contact the Alzheimer's Association.
Yeah.
Here's a helpline number to contact them, 24/7.
Wonderful. And I'll just also add is, another valuable service that we offer in addition to all of our education programs and our support groups, and we actually have a program, it's all meetups that are for people that are living in early stages. They're very complementary to like a memory cafe, but they're opportunities for caregivers and the person living in the early stages to get together and have a social experience and connect. And again, usually we do those in the community. We might go to Tower Hill, we might go to the Worcester Art Museum, or we might go see a concert at Mechanics Hall. But because of COVID-19, we've also moved those online. And there's certainly some benefit to this virtual world that anybody, anywhere can participate because there's no boundaries as far as distance. And the other thing I'd like to mention is we have a program called Care Consultations, which is a very individualized care planning opportunity that's free of charge. Everybody's situation with Alzheimer's and dementia is different, and I learned very early on in my career, if you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've truly met one person with Alzheimer's. It's not a cookie-cutter disease, and it affects everybody differently. So we have a care consultation program that right now we're only doing over the phone, but it really, we listen to the person's story, their situation, and then we help problem solve. We help guide them to the right resources, and we can do that care consultation as often as they like, and they get a written action plan so that they have a summary of what we discussed, and again, things to address, maybe not only right now, but also in the future, things to be prepared for.
Now, my wife works with Alzheimer's patients. She works in assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
And they have programs for them to exercise the mind.
Mm-hmm.
You bring that into the house if they're at home?
So we don't, the Alzheimer's Association doesn't physically go into the house. We're not able to do that due to staff capacity. But we can point people, point families, caregivers to resources such as that. So depending upon the situation of what's happening, we can help to navigate some community resources that can not only benefit the individual, but also the family. We have a huge database that we have a lot of different resources, and we can help families connect to those resources.
You know, how about, like a daycare, elderly daycare centers and things like that?
Yeah, so depending upon the situation, what we try to do through our helpline and through our care consultation program is, we try to educate families, caregivers on what to look for in a day program, in a nursing home, in an assisted living, specific to someone with Alzheimer's. So we try to give them questions to ask, and then we give them a list of day programs, assisted livings, nursing homes to look into, depending upon their situation, and then give them the tools they need to really figure out what is the best place for their loved one, where their loved one's needs are going to be best met.
Now, as this disease progresses, they actually go back to earlier years in their life? Is that true?
Yeah. So, especially with Alzheimer's disease, one of the first symptoms that's noticed is short-term memory loss. Our long-term memory stays with us the longest. So that's why in the early stages, if you're having a conversation with, a parent or, your spouse, and they're kind of repeating the same story from 30, 40 years ago, that might be a little bit of a red flag. Or if they're asking the same question over and over again, even though they've asked it 10 times and you've answered it, that could be a red flag too. So long-term memory stays with us the longest with Alzheimer's disease. I should mention that in some cases, people that English isn't their primary or first spoken language, they will revert back to their native language because it's part of their long-term memory.
And what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Good question. That is a question I get all the time. So, dementia is really that umbrella word. It's not a disease or a diagnosis. Dementia describes a set of symptoms, and there are many diseases that cause those symptoms. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. It's estimated that about 60 to 80% of all the dementia cases are of the Alzheimer's type. And we know that dementia is not part of normal aging. So the other types of dementia include vascular dementia, which is usually brought on by a vascular illness like a stroke or a smaller stroke that we call TIAs. And it's marked by inappropriate behavior like laughing at a funeral, crying at a wedding, impaired judgment, difficulty with problem solving. Another type of dementia is frontal temporal dementia, which affects the front temporal lobe of the brain. It's where kind of our forehead is. That impacts people usually between the ages of 45 and 64. There's distractibility and difficulty in focusing. There's frequent mood changes, and there's usually impulsive behavior. There's another type of dementia called Lewy body dementia. It's most associated with Parkinson's disease. There's a person is very has an increased risk for falls, and they usually have some visual and auditory hallucinations. So that just names a few of the other dementia, and that's why getting a diagnosis is so important. When I meet with a family and they say, oh, my dad has dementia, and I'll say, well, what type? Because, they're all progressive. They are similar, but there are each one, and knowing what one you're dealing with can impact treatment and like long-term planning.
Yeah, most of all, the type of treatment is important, and you want to be treating them for the right type, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not just medication as far as treatment, but it is also, you know, environmental and engagement and structure can also be part of that treatment plan. Keeping somebody with Alzheimer's engaged and mentally stimulated can really go a long way in keeping them kind of in a good place, meaning that they might not decline. You know, it is true that saying if you don't use it, you lose it. And there's some very good research that suggests that for someone that's living with dementia, they will decline quicker if they do not stay engaged and stimulated. And that's why, you know, participating in a day program, going to memory cafes, and all the memory cafes, a lot of them are virtual right now. That engagement and that socialization is so beneficial for that person.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I always say that I believe your brain is another muscle, just like your arms and your legs. And, you know, you have to exercise to keep your muscles in shape, and you have to exercise your brain. And if you by doing that on a regular basis, I try to do it myself. You know, I like playing solitaire on my phone. I think because I like reading, and you got to keep, if you just look at the TV all the time, I don't think you're not exercising your brain.
Right. And there's some really great research that has suggested that, you know, we've got to incorporate our brain into our physical health.
Yes.
And so, you know, exercising, even if it's very simple exercise, moving your body to get the blood and oxygen flowing to your brain is so important. Learning something new. You know, so if you're used to reading mysteries, you know, read something different. Learn a new language. Do puzzles. That is very good. You know, stay active. So I'm a big advocate for, you know, volunteer as long as you can, because that's going to help you, your brain stay engaged and active and healthy, as well as eating well. So making sure you're eating a healthy diet.
Yes.
That is fruits and vegetables and lean meats, fish, foods that are rich in omega-3 and antioxidants is really quite beneficial. And so there's some research that suggests that, yes, if you incorporate your brain into your overall health, you are helping to reduce your risk for developing Alzheimer's and other types of dementia.
Now, how about the fact that a lot of senior citizens today keep working?
So it is. I mean, I think people continue to work for a variety of reasons. And, you know, staying engaged and working is a good thing. What I will say is that sometimes the first signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's or another dementia are seen at work because people are working a lot longer. So they're having more difficulties following through with their work responsibilities, or, you know, managing a budget at work. So, you know, we have seen people that are working longer, you know, that some of the first symptoms are noticed at work.
Ah, I see it. But continuing to work is a good way of keeping yourself going, because you're keeping your mind operating. You find a good need to get up in the morning.
Absolutely. absolutely. And so that's why a lot of people now, they retire, but they find a part-time job because it is a way to get out and be social and be engaged. And yes, that's really beneficial.
Oh, yes. I mean, I work at a job that I really enjoy, and that's why I do it. And I get paid for it, but I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
So I looked at my retirement as finally working at what I like
Having fun.
and having fun. I don't do it for the money. I do it for the fun.
That's great. That's great.
And I think if everyone looked at retirement that way, they'd find it. Because I've retired 3 times now. I keep finding new jobs. But I don't want to stop. And that's why I've been doing this show for, about 35 years now.
Right.
Wow, that's wonderful.
This is purely voluntary, but it's like you say, it's a stimulus. And it keeps you going. But
And,
getting back to what are some of the warning signs that we want to watch for with the person we live with, or a grandparent, or a parent?
Sure. So we often kind of talk about 10 warning signs that could be red flags. So I will just kind of say that, if you have one of these, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you notice that you have, maybe 3 or more, and there is a pattern of these warning signs, it's really best to start having a conversation with, a primary care physician, and we can talk about that as well. But here are what we say are the 10 warning signs. So memory loss that disrupts daily life. So I always say, as we age, we all forget. You forget where you put your phone, where you put your keys, where you put your glasses.
Yeah, we call it senior moments.
Yes. The good thing is that you can find your phone. You can find your keys, So we forget, but the concern lies is when that forgetfulness really starts impacting your day. So you're not taking care of your personal needs. You're not taking your medications. You're forgetting about doctor's appointments, and you've forgotten about 3 dentist appointments that you should have been to. The adult daughter goes and looks in the refrigerator, and there's only 2 gallons of orange juice. So that's a concern because it's impacting the person's daily life. The second warning sign is challenges in planning and solving problems. So maybe an example would be, you're driving your car and there's a detour sign. Most of us can follow that detour sign and get back to where we need to go. Right. If you're living with, in the early stages of Alzheimer's, you're going to have difficulty following that detour. So that problem-solving ability has been impaired. The third is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, work, or at leisure. Increased confusion to time or place. Number 5 is trouble understanding visual and spatial relationships. So a good example of this one is, people in the early stages of Alzheimer's still drive. Certainly there are huge liabilities and huge concerns, but someone that's having difficulty with visual and spatial relationships, they're taking a right-hand turn and they can't judge the distance between the road and the curb, and they go up on the curb. Or they can't judge the distance between them and the person in front of them, so they have little fender benders. Mm-hmm. The 6th one is new problems with words and speaking or writing. So somebody may call a wristwatch a hand clock, or a water bottle a container. So they might create a new word, or their words will not come out. They come out gibberish. The 7th is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So a purse might be found at the bottom of a hamper. The keys might be found in the sugar bowl. Number 8 is impaired or poor judgment, so wearing clothing not appropriate for the season. So on a really hot day, wearing layers and layers of clothes, and on a freezing cold day, not wearing enough clothing. Number 9 is withdrawal from work or social activities. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, it becomes increasingly frustrating for the person to kind of meet those expectations. So of a social activity. So going out to dinner can be very overwhelming because the menu is overwhelming. They might not be able to follow the conversation, so they'd rather stay at home. And number 10 is changes in mood and personality as well as increased behaviors, especially for someone that normally they would have let something roll off their back, but now because they have, Alzheimer's, they struggle with any type of change or change to their schedule or change to a social engagement. It causes a lot of upset for them. So that's what we call kind of like the warning signs of dementia. And as I said, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, but there's other types of dementia. And it may not, if you got to go for a diagnosis, it may not be a type of dementia at all. There are some illnesses that are considered treatable that can mask the symptoms of dementia. So a urinary tract infection can cause somebody to have increased confusion. Depression can mask the symptoms of dementia. A thyroid condition, medication interaction, a brain tumor. So if folks that are watching tonight, if you notice these signs and you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, feel free to call the helpline. We'll help guide you to getting a diagnosis, but you can also have a conversation with your primary care physician, because really the first step is determining what is causing those symptoms. It may not be Alzheimer's at all.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases now, the actual patient may not want to talk about it, right? So you really need to have someone else intervene with the primary care physician to get them to look at it, because, the Alzheimer's patient may not want to admit to that, right?
Yeah, and it's very scary. But it's really important to know what you're dealing with. Right. We advocate at the Alzheimer's Association to get a diagnosis sooner than later, because the person can, again, know what they're dealing with and be able to help in the planning long term. And most medications right now that are approved for Alzheimer's and the other dementias really are only helpful in the earlier stages. They give the most benefit in the early stages. And for families, you don't want to wait till a crisis occurs.
Right.
You notice some of these symptoms, you don't want to wait until the person wanders and gets lost. You don't want to wait until there's a car accident. Again, if you have the information, you can make the best decisions. You have a support network to help you. But if you wait for a crisis to get a diagnosis, nobody makes a good decision in a crisis. We're really just putting Band-Aids on it. So it's important, if individuals that are watching tonight see some of these symptoms, it's really best. You can have an honest conversation with your loved one, but certainly make an appointment with the doctor. And you can kind of just give the nurse or the doctor a call beforehand, just to say, my mom has this appointment, and these are the things that we're seeing. And it's really good for families to keep a log of what they're seeing and really make it very specific. They just don't want to say mom's more confused or mom has short-term memory loss. Be very specific about what you're seeing and talk to other family members, talk to friends. They might be seeing this similar symptoms or have other signs that they've noticed that you can provide to the doctor. But it is really important to get a diagnosis earlier than later.
Yeah, it's not like if you're having headaches or stomach problems, you know you got something wrong. You want to go to see a physician.
Yeah.
But in this case, they don't feel they have anything wrong. It's probably a little harder to get them to go to a physician.
It can be.
So,
Yeah.
do you have a way of convincing people that they should go?
It's hard. So, one of the things that we often suggest at the Alzheimer's Association is to pair the doctor's appointment with something that the person would enjoy. So if they like to go out for ice cream or out to lunch, say, you know what, we're going to go to lunch today. We call those like little therapeutic siblets because, there comes a time with Alzheimer's disease and dementia that we can no longer explain or be rational. I usually say that you'll never win an argument with someone with Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
And so sometimes giving them information that will kind of calm, soothe, make it better for them, rather than saying, Mom, you have a memory loss, we have to go to the doctor. You say, you know what? Mom, I think it would be a good idea just to go and have a talk with the doctor, and after that we'll go to lunch. And maybe just focus on the positive thing of going for lunch or going for ice cream. Because if you say to your mom or your dad or your spouse, oh, do you want to go to the doctor to find out what's causing your memory loss, they're going to say no. So just frame it a little bit differently. And, everybody is different. So I've known people that wanted to go to the doctor to find out what was going on, and I've worked with people that have been very resistant. But everyone is different, and that's why if a family that's tuning in tonight is struggling with that, call our helpline. That's what our clinicians do. They can give you tips. They can give you strategies on ways to get your loved one to the doctor. And so that's a great benefit to the helpline, is that we can kind of learn a little bit about your loved one and what they like, and maybe come up with some suggestions for the family to try.
Now, I noticed that when I go to the doctor, they ask a lot of questions now. I know they ask COVID-related questions, but when you actually get into the exam room with the doctor, they'll ask you a lot of questions that relate to how you are mentally.
Right.
So that's a help, isn't it?
That's great.
It is, and we have some great doctors,
Yes.
out there, and I think there is more awareness. One of the things that, in addition to all the programs and services that we do at the Alzheimer's Association, we also do a lot of advocacy work, both locally and federally. And so last year we worked with the Department of Public Health and the Executive Office of Elder Affairs and the Mass Hospital Association and the Mass Medical Society to pass legislation that would require all acute care settings, hospitals, including nurses and staff that work in hospitals and acute care settings and clinics to become dementia capable, and it includes not only training in the hospital for staff that would have hands-on experience with a patient, but also making sure our ERs are equipped to be dementia capable and training all that staff and just the overall environment. So we are and that's supposed to happen by, I believe, October of 2021. And so, that is only going to benefit, individuals living with Alzheimer's as well as families and caregivers, because doctors are going to be required to even get more education. And then our new docs that are just coming out of med school, they're going to be required to have very specific Alzheimer's training. And then physicians that have been practicing for a while, when they go to renew their license, they're going to have very specific training in Alzheimer's and dementia.
Oh, this is
That's
great.
wonderful.
Yeah, that is great. Are there any physical signs of Alzheimer's, like the way they walk, or use your hands, or move your head? Is there anything like that that might give a sign?
So what usually happens, so it's certainly, because of our brain is our control center. Our
Yes.
brains control everything that we do.
I know.
So ultimately, the entire body, all of our organs become impacted. But I would say that, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a type of dementia called Lewy body dementia that is most connected to Parkinson's disease. And not all individuals that have Parkinson's disease will develop Lewy body dementia, but they are at a higher risk for fall, so you'll see that kind of shuffling gait. But Alzheimer's does impact the brain and body. So a person can become unbalanced, their coordination may be impacted, their ability to taste foods become impacted, and so they may not taste that a food has become spoiled. Their smell becomes impacted, their hearing becomes impacted. So again, as I mentioned, because our brains are so incredibly complex, and depending upon where the disease is, it impacts everybody differently. So again, getting early diagnosis is so beneficial in connecting to the Alzheimer's Association, because we can really help guide you through the journey. And it truly is a journey, not only for the individual, but for the family caregiver as well.
Oh, yes. I mean, now, what I've read about Alzheimer's in the past is it's a plaque that forms in the brain, right?
Yeah, so we understand one of the precursors with Alzheimer's disease is this amyloid plaque. Amyloid is a protein. And some of the research suggests that this amyloid protein attacks our neurons, our neurotransmitters.
Right.
And our neurotransmitters is what is responsible for sending messages from one area of the brain to another.
Mm-hmm.
So when this beta amyloid protein attacks the neurotransmitters, it totally disrupts the neurotransmitters from sending messages from our brain to our body. So a person can't connect A to B, B to C. And so that's why sometimes, they ask you a question, what time is it? You answer it, and 10 seconds later, they'll ask it again. Or if you say, go into the bathroom, they may not know how to navigate to get to the bathroom because there's 5 different doors in the hallway, and they're not familiar with their environment. It's because of the damage that this protein does to the brain. But again, we believe that there's a lot of other reasons too, and that's why it's been so difficult to find a cure, because our brains are so complex.
Right,
But we are hopeful that by mid-century we will have a cure or a means of prevention. There is a lot of work being done, not only in the United States, but across the world. We have a virtual Alzheimer's Association International Conference every summer. This year it's actually the next 2 weeks. It's virtually, where we bring together, 5,000 plus researchers to talk about, what they're working on, to find a cure, or a means of prevention. And the cure or prevention may be found here in the United States, but it might also be found in another country, but certainly will benefit everybody.
Yeah, so long term, what they're looking for is some type of medication that would attack that plaque.
So they're looking, because there's also some theories about tau, which is another type of protein that attacks this inflammation, because we know that there's a correlation between diabetes and brain health. So there's a lot of different things that they are looking at. If it was only the beta amyloid, we might be in a better place. But our brains are very complex, and this is certainly a complicated disease. But compared to where we were 20 years ago, we've learned a lot more. We're continuing to have drugs in the pipeline for FDA approval, with the benefit that they'll reduce the cognitive function decline and help to remove some of the amyloid protein. So there is a lot of work being done, and it's not going to be like one medication. It might be a cocktail of approaches, medication and lifestyle strategies that will be the right formula for creating a world without Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. That's really what we hope for.
No, you mentioned diabetes, and right now diabetes is of epidemic proportions. Because I talk to a lot of people. I'm diabetic, onset. And it seems to be, I talk to so many people that I know in my age group, and they're all diabetic. I have used I took the advice of my doctor. I'm on certain medications. I'm not on any kind of insulin, but I exercise. I try to eat right, eat less, and things like that. And I've gone from, an A1C of 7.9, I think at one time, down to under 7 now. I'm like a 6.8 and 6.4 last time. So I'm below diabetic level.
Right.
So you can do it, but you have to work at it. And that's what I'm thinking with the Alzheimer's. Yes, if you can prevent it, if not, if you have it, even delay it by using your head and doing the right things, right?
Yeah, so, when I mentioned risk factors, the number one risk factor is age, but there's other risk factors, and I'll connect it to the things that you can control. So there is a family history. You're more at risk if you have a parent, grandparent, blood relative that have lived with Alzheimer's. Genetics plays a factor, but genetics right now accounts for about less than 5% of all diagnoses. Gender, women live longer, but there's also some research that there's some hormones that could be connected to an increased risk for developing Alzheimer's. and there's still studies going on about that and what we need to learn. But factors we can control are, serious head injury, wear your seatbelt. We know that there's a correlation between concussions and Alzheimer's. There's been a study at Boston University on deceased brains of football players and the impact of concussions and the development of dementia earlier in life. But you can treat heart disease. You can treat, stroke and diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. So we always say know your numbers and make sure you are, managing your weight, managing your blood sugar, managing your cholesterol and blood pressure. And because those are factors. So if you're managing them, you're doing something good. And again, what we've been talking about throughout the show is these lifestyle factors. So diet, exercise, social engagement, and cognitive stimulation is really important.
Yes. So actually, people would realize that, you go and get your car checked every now and then, you get it tuned. You should get your body checked and get a physical on an annual. I go semi-annually, but I'm a lot older now, so I need to go semi-annually. But I think it's a good idea. And people don't do that. I mean, you have people who won't go to the doctor for 20 years.
Yeah, and it's really important. And, it's important to go for a yearly checkup. And really write questions down, utilize that 20 minutes you may have with the doctor so that you get the most out of it. I will say that if you do have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or dementia, it is also really important to have a physician that, listens to your concerns, follow through with treatment, and will see you, regularly. At the beginning of the show, I mentioned that, Alzheimer's and other dementias, they're all progressive. And there can be really quick, dramatic changes that may not be related to the Alzheimer's or dementia, but it might be a urinary tract infection. But it's really important that you're going to have a doctor that will see you and make changes to the treatment plan to make sure you're on the right right dosage of medication, because it's not all, one size fits all. So it's very, very important that you have a doctor, that's going to listen to your concerns and work with you, and the individual living with Alzheimer's disease or dementia.
Even a urinary tract infection, it's not something normal. You should know why this is happening.
Right.
So you can correct the problem.
Exactly.
And find out why it's happening.
But that's why it's key to seek out your primary care physician.
Yeah.
Because as Julie had said, it could be an underlying other medical problem.
Right.
And not a dementia.
Yeah.
But then again, it could be a
But
dementia.
that can lead to
so-
something worse.
Right.
So, you should get checked. But we have to run.
Oh, we do.
But, Julie, I'd love to have you on here physically, if we can work that out. No, really, because you can take calls. It's hard to take calls when we're doing it on the phone, so we'd have you in here, you could take some phone calls.
And I appreciate you and Kelly working with me and doing this via the telephone. But once we're back out in the community, and I have the go from my organization, the Alzheimer's Association, I would be happy to come on. I think there's so much that we could talk about with Alzheimer's disease. I would be happy to do that.
We're going to do, and there could be sometime this winter or next spring, whenever we get through this.
Absolutely.
When we get the clear
Yeah, we get the
to
clear.
go forward.
Right.
Yes.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
well,
much,
thank you very
Julie.
much,
I love
Julie.
the opportunity.
Thank you. We got to run.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.